Next, we don't yet know exactly when the general election will be, but we do know there's a mayoral election fixed for the new year. At the Liberal Democrat conference today, their candidate, Siobhan Bonita, talked up her chances of taking City Hall. Our political correspondent, Simon Harris, reports from Bournemouth.
Siobhan Bonita has a mountain to climb. In political terms, she's virtually unknown, yet she thinks she can be the next mayor of London. And while she's no fan of Sadiq Khan, that didn't stop her borrowing one of his successful campaign messages.
I am the daughter of migrants.
In her speech to the Lib Dem conference, she criticised the current mayor for failing to get knife crime under control.
Sadiq Khan has wasted an entire mayoral term achieving almost nothing on this issue. I will push hard for a statutory youth service, and I will establish London's youth happy hour, where schools, churches, sports clubs and companies will provide safe spaces and enjoyable activities so that not a single child is vulnerable to crime after school.
Siobhan Bonita has had a taste of mayoral elections. She stood as an independent candidate in 2012. She came fifth. That election also saw the Lib Dems beaten into fourth place behind the Greens. But Mrs Bonita believes the party's success in this year's Euro elections has changed London's political landscape.
People are just going to see it's going to be between myself and Sadiq.
But before Londoners go to the polls to choose the next mayor, there's almost certainly going to be a general election. And that will be the first test for the Lib Dems under their new leader. You've made it clear you won't work with Jeremy Corbyn in a coalition. How much effort will you put into trying to unseat him in Islington North?
Well, I don't think Jeremy Corbyn is fit to be Prime Minister. I'm very straightforward about that. And in terms of his, frustrating position on Brexit, where he's just been trying to deliver a Brexit against the wishes of many of his own members, and that's one of the reasons people from the Labour Party are flocking to the Lib Dems. But also really worryingly, the stance that he's taken on not cracking down on anti-Semitism within his party, for a party that's supposed to stand for equality. So I think Jeremy Corbyn is not fit for that office.
Is he vulnerable even with the 33,000 majority?
Well, I'm sure there's Liberal Democrats campaigning hard in Islington. We used to run the council there, and and I remember we came very close in Islington South at one point.
In the mayoral election, Sadiq Khan is still favourite to win, but Siobhan Bonita believes the Lib Dems are on a winning streak in London, and the general election will prove it.
And Simon's live for us now. Siobhan Bonita's big day then at conference, Simon, but there were other new faces to dazzle the delegates.
Yes, we saw Siobhan Bonita being congratulated there at the end of her speech by Chuka Umunna, the Labour MP for Streatham, who defected to the Lib Dems earlier this year. And there's no doubt he was the big hit with delegates here in Bournemouth today when he launched a blistering attack on his former leader, Jeremy Corbyn.
This is Jeremy Corbyn's Labour. You cannot be a champion of liberalism if you are currently subject to a formal investigation by the Equality and Human Rights Commission for institutional racism against Jewish people. You cannot be a champion of liberalism when your leader's supporters think it is acceptable to abuse, vilify and deselect anyone who dares question the leader.
Chuka Umunna won't be standing in his old seat of Streatham, where he had a majority of 26,000. Instead, he's going to try to win the cities of London and Westminster from the Tories. We don't yet know about another defector, Sam Gyimah, who held the seat for the Tories in Surrey East and defected to the Lib Dems at the weekend. We're waiting to see where he will pop up as a candidate.
OK, Simon, thank you. In the last few minutes, Facebook has announced it is partnering with the Met Police to try to stop terror attacks from being live streamed on the site. Facebook is aiming to create technology to identify more quickly a terrorist who is using social media to publicise their attack. Well, our correspondent Simon Harris is at Scotland Yard. Simon, how will this work?
Geraint, when a white supremacist murdered 51 people in a series of shootings at mosques in the New Zealand city of Christchurch in March, he was able to broadcast the massacre live on Facebook because Facebook's automatic detection system didn't work. The live footage should have triggered an alert which automatically stopped the live streaming of the pictures. But Facebook's algorithms simply didn't recognise that these were the actions of a gunman on the loose. Well, now Facebook has concluded it needs to build up a database of video images mimicking terrorist attacks. Fundamentally, Facebook's computers need to know what the pictures might look like if a gunman used a phone or a camera to film their attack as they opened fire. And that's where the Met's firearms officers come in. They're going to film their training exercises with body-worn cameras, and that footage of the so-called shooter's perspective will be given to Facebook to help build up a library of pictures of guns being fired in terrorist scenarios. And when Facebook's got enough pictures, an automatic artificial intelligence program should be able to detect real terrorist attacks and stop them being streamed live. Geraint.
Fascinating, Simon. Let's hope it works. Thank you. Good evening. There are not enough doctors and not enough nurses. That was the complaint made directly to the Prime Minister today as he visited a hospital in East London. Boris Johnson was confronted by the father of a gravely ill baby girl on the children's ward of Whipps Cross Hospital. Omar Salem, who's a Labour Party activist, told Mr Johnson that the NHS is being destroyed. The hospital's chief executive admitted services on the ward had been under pressure last night. Our political correspondent Simon Harris has our report.
It was not the hospital visit Boris Johnson was expecting. In a corridor at Whipps Cross, he was confronted by Omar Salem. Mr Salem told the Prime Minister his 7-day-old daughter almost died yesterday and had to wait 2 hours to be seen by a doctor.
There are not enough people on this ward. There are not enough doctors. There are not enough nurses. It's not well organised enough. The NHS has been destroyed. It's been destroyed. It's been destroyed. And now you come here for a press opportunity.
Well, actually, there's no press here.
What do you mean there's no press here? Who are these people?
Mr Johnson said his visit to Whipps Cross was to see how the hospital could be modernised.
Well, that's not going to fix things now. It's a bit late, isn't it?
Mr Salem, who describes himself as a Labour activist campaigning for a socialist Europe, later tweeted that he gave the Prime Minister a piece of his mind after his daughter was neglected for hours last night. In a statement, the hospital's chief executive said, "We are constantly reviewing staffing levels on our wards to ensure our patients are safe at all times, but occasionally, as in fact happened on this ward last night, an unexpected emergency in one part of the hospital can cause a temporary pressure elsewhere."
As a constituency MP, the kind of feedback I get about Whipps Cross is variable. Some of my constituents go there, receive an absolutely fantastic service and couldn't be happier. Others find delays, they're not happy, they feel they're not being seen to. And the point is that we need consistently excellent service.
Fine. Well, in your land, believe whatever you want. Thank you.
With one final dig at the Prime Minister, Mr Salem was gently led away. And after that, the rest of Mr Johnson's visit to Whipps Cross was a piece of cake. Well, a plate of biscuits anyway.
You've seen a few Boris confrontations in your time, Simon. What did you make of this one?
Well, there's a real contrast in the way he reacts when he meets the public. When he's on the front foot being asked for selfies, he can be the consummate performer. But when he's being challenged or confronted, he's far less sure-footed. And we've seen that quite a lot recently. What struck me today was the way he responded to Mr Salem by saying that there were no press present. When they were clearly visible down the corridor, you can hear their camera shutters clicking. What he said just didn't match reality.
Simon, thank you very much indeed.
Good evening. 9 months after Crossrail was supposed to open, the only signal coming down the tracks from bosses was the possibility of further delays and higher costs. They told the stock market today there is a high level of uncertainty for the project, and if the Elizabeth line, as it will be known, doesn't open by March 2021, then almost £400 million more will have to be added to the already over-budget bill. Well, the chair of Crossrail told our political correspondent Simon Harris he hoped none of this would be necessary.
This is the Crossrail dream, a new high-speed commuter line underneath London. But the trains are empty, the stations are building sites. Crossrail should have opened last December. Now it might not be before April 2021, and even that's not guaranteed. And when you build a railway, the longer it takes, the more it costs. Transport for London has formally advised the Stock Exchange there's still a high level of uncertainty in the project, and further delays could cost another £400 million. In 2010, Crossrail was expected to cost £14.8 billion. Last year, that rose to £17.6 billion. Another £400 million would take it to £18 billion.
A year on from finding out that Crossrail will now not open on time, we're hearing it could cost hundreds of millions of pounds more, and we still don't know when it's going to open. I think it's very worrying for Londoners, because this is not just having an impact on those who want to use Crossrail, this is delaying every other investment in transport in London.
The biggest challenges are finishing the stations and getting the signals to work properly. None of it is proving easy. But the new man in charge says extra money will only be needed in a worst-case scenario.
If things did not go according to plan, if there were delays, then there may, we would envisage up to 400 million extra. We are not asking for that money. We do not expect to spend that money, but we have to I think it's prudent for our sponsors to be aware of that possibility.
They've told me they need another 2 months before they will know whether they've managed to get a proper grip in relation to the construction phase. So I would hope by around November time we'll be in a better place to let Londoners know whether the Crossrail are able to keep the promises they've made to us with the new team.
Looking at Crossrail today, it's hard to believe this is a railway which should be approaching its first birthday. Instead, it's a railway which at best won't open for at least another year.
Simon, what bosses at Crossrail are saying, though, is we're hearing this because they're actually trying to be transparent, aren't they?
It might seem strange, but there is something positive to take from today's announcement. When the launch of Crossrail was postponed a year ago, it came as a huge shock. Apparently no one saw it coming. And to be fair to the new management team, they are honouring a promise to be open and transparent. So while the possibility of another bailout, another delay is bad news, at least they're being honest. And as the chairman said to me, he doesn't anticipate needing any more time or needing any more money. He's just flagging up what might be needed if things don't go to plan. Unfortunately, with Crossrail, it has a history of things not going to plan.
That is true. Simon, thank you.
The Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, has said he has absolutely no concerns about losing his seat in Islington North in a general election, despite the fact that in one poll today he was deemed to be the most unpopular opposition leader since records began in 1977. He sat down with our political correspondent Simon Harris ahead of the Labour Party conference this weekend.
Jeremy Corbyn, in next year's mayoral election, Labour's candidate Sadiq Khan will call for Britain to stay in the EU. Your refusal to endorse that position isn't going to be helpful to him, is it?
Sadiq has made that position very clear for a very long time, and he believes that to be the case. What we're saying is there should be a choice between remain in the European Union, hopefully with some reforms, and I would imagine that would be what Sadiq would support, or leave, but leave with a trade deal.
Are there any other Labour MPs in London, apart from Kate Hoey, who don't want you to endorse staying in the EU?
I've spoken to many Labour MPs in London about their issues, but above all, what they're telling me is they want the issue settled. Many people in London called for a second referendum. The Liberal Democrats want to cancel and annul the last referendum. I'm saying that I think that final choice should be made by the British people.
How many seats do you expect to lose in London to the Lib Dems?
We don't expect to lose any seats to the Lib Dems in London. We expect to gain seats across London.
But you do accept that London is a Remain city?
I represent a Remain constituency.
Are you safe in your constituency?
I'm very happy in my constituency. I get on extremely well with the people in my constituency.
Do you think the Lib Dems might take Islington North?
No, I don't.
Voters might find it illogical that you, as the Prime Minister, will negotiate a new deal and then refuse to recommend it in a referendum.
We will negotiate a deal that we put to the British people that would protect jobs and services and make sure there's a trade relationship. The alternative is...
But then you won't back it in a referendum.
The alternative is a no deal.
But if you negotiate a deal, why wouldn't you recommend it?
We haven't negotiated the deal yet. It would be around the 5 pillars we put forward. That is trade and rights with the European Union, particularly environmental, consumer and workers' protections.
Can I ask you about what's going on in Camberwell and Peckham? It seems there's a move to threaten to deselect Harriet Harman as a Labour candidate if she becomes the next Speaker. What do you think of that?
I've only just heard that the party made a view known there about whether Harriet should run for Speaker or not. They're entitled to do that. They're a constituency party. They are the members that have supported and elected her in the past.
Will you step in to protect her?
I don't interfere in the running of local parties. What I want to do is make sure they're democratically run and that all MPs are accountable.
So you're happy if Harriet Harman is told she's being deselected because she wants to run as Speaker?
No. They have taken a view on whether she should run as Speaker or not. That is the General Committee. They've made that decision. Surely they're entitled to express a point of view. They, after all, supported her in being elected in the first place. I personally am not getting involved in the Speaker's election at all. I don't think it's my place to do that. It's a matter for MPs as a whole to decide who the Speaker should be. I will vote in that election, but I'll not be involved in campaigning for anybody.